the first way that water itself proves God is through the tropics. The tropics. You say, what are you talking about, Pastor? Look at your globe in front of you and find the North Pole and find the South Pole. Now, the seasons for the Southern Hemisphere and the Northern Hemisphere are opposite. So the winter in the Northern Hemisphere is farthest away from the sun, but the summer is also farthest away from the sun. It's just the tilt of the earth that's different. And the fall and the spring are the closest. That's how the oval works, okay? And it's just exactly opposite as it is in the Northern Hemisphere as it is in the Southern Hemisphere. However, think about this for a second. Since it's the same, basically, don't you think the weather patterns would be similar? Wouldn't the weather patterns in the Northern Hemisphere, since it's basically the orbit is the same and the summer and winters are the same as far as their distance from the sun and their tilt towards the sun, wouldn't they be similar? Well, go ahead and look at your stress ball and look down at your stress ball on the North Pole and tell me what you see. So you're going to stare straight down at the North Pole and tell me what you see. We're looking at proof of God through water here and looking at why the temperature or the climates are quite different in the north and the south. So you're looking at the top, North Pole. What do you see? You see a whole bunch of colors there, right? You know what those colors are? Those colors are land masses. So you notice that a majority, it looks like 60% or so of the Northern Hemisphere is land, right? Now flip it over and look at the South Pole. And since they have similar winters and similar summer patterns, we're looking for a reason that the climates are so different. What do you see when you look at the South Pole? When you look at the South Pole, you see almost all water. The Southern Hemisphere is 90% water. 90% of the Earth's population lives in the Northern Hemisphere, which makes sense because that's where all the land is. Say, what does that have to do with anything? Well, since summer and winter work basically the same in the Southern Hemisphere and the Northern Hemisphere, they're still tilted towards the sun. The Southern Hemisphere is tilted towards the sun in the summer and is the same distance as the Northern Hemisphere when it's tilted towards the sun. So why the big climate difference, right? Why the tropics? The answer is because the Southern Hemisphere is all water, and water has the highest specific heat on the planet. What does that mean? Speak in English. What it means is that there is no other substance on the planet other than pure water that can absorb heat more efficiently than water. That's proof of God in itself right there. Anything that we add to water makes its ability to hold heat worse. There is nothing we can do to pure water to make it have a better ability to hold heat. You say, well, I mix 50-50 antifreeze. That's so it doesn't freeze. Mixing 50-50 antifreeze with distilled water makes its ability to remove heat from your engine worse. It just makes it not freeze, because freezing your engine block would not be good. All right? So since you have this massive mass of water in the Southern Hemisphere, you have a situation with a huge heat battery where the climate is much, much more stable in the south. And this is what gives you the tropics. And this is why you have, in the Northern Hemisphere, you have much wilder swings of temperature, especially in areas where there is large land masses. Like, let me give you an example. North Dakota. There's a place in North Dakota, let me give you an opposite example of this. So places that do not have large bodies of water surrounding them are going to have much more erratic weather. North Dakota has a town in the northern part of the state called Rugby, North Dakota. And there's a monument in Rugby, North Dakota that says it is the geographical center of, have you been to the monument? The geographical center of North America. And that is why North Dakota, and especially that area, has some of the it has crazy hot summers and it has crazy cold winters, because land has a much lower specific heat than water. So it is much easier for the sun to change the heat or not heat of, to heat or cool that area. So that's why you'll also find like coastal areas generally have more moderate temperatures, right? That's why people love coastal California, because it's like 70 degrees every single day. I knew somebody that lived in coastal California and Southern California one time, and they said it was boring. Why would you need a weatherman here? It's 75 or 80 degrees and sunny every single day. That's because you're living next to this large land or this large mass of water. All right, but look, this is where we get the tropics. Because God designed this massive heat battery in the southern hemisphere, that's where we get all these clouds being shot out from the tropics to bring and distill the water over the land masses in the northern hemisphere. I mean, that's basically an overview of the distillation process of the earth. But I mean, you have all kinds of things. You have the rainforests, that contain, like they say, 50% of all species, or some that we haven't even figured out what they are or whatever in the rainforest, and it's only like 5 or 6% of the land. You have important things called cloud formation that comes out of the tropics. It rains. It helps drives the circuits of the seas with all that warm water. And look, it's for migratory birds, the tropics is home. Like it's like when they come from Canada and they make it to the tropics, that's when they're like made it, right? That's the end point. So the tropics is like the driver. It's the bottom heat sink of this whole cycle. And without the tropics, we wouldn't have these circuits. We wouldn't have this warm air, this big sponge coming over, cooling off, and dropping all this distilled water in the mountains, dropping all this water over the land masses in the northern hemisphere. So, I don't know. Like, how can you deny God when you see a design like that perfectly matches the season?